to welcome all of you to this very important meeting today, Tuesday, December 5th, 2017, in the City of Portsmouth's City Council chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Commissioners, we will now have roll call. Please indicate your presence electronically. You're going to have to give me a moment. My assistant is still in the audience. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to wait a minute. I need her to make sure that she has all of the speaking stuff.
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun there. Please hold on a moment.
Kim took care of it. It's not going to work yet. That's fine. Because we can't move on until she comes back. Just give us a moment. That sounds negative.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. We have a lot of speakers who would like to express their opinions today, and we are making sure they all get signed up appropriately, so please bear with us. Take two. I'd like to welcome you all to this very important meeting today, Tuesday, December 5th, 2017, in the City of Portsmouth City Council chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Commissioners, we will now have roll call. Please indicate your presence electronically. 6 members of the Planning Commission are present.
Commissioners, before you are the minutes of the November 7, 2017 public hearing. If there aren't any changes, we are in need of a motion. Thank you, Commissioner Youngblood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
And we have a second from Commissioner G. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. We have a motion and a second, and you will be voting electronically. The minutes are approved by a vote of 6-0. Announcements of future meetings and conferences. Due to the New Year's Eve, the New Year holiday, please note that our next scheduled work session is Tuesday, January the 16th, 2018 at 12:30 p.m., 6th floor conference room, followed by the public hearing at 1:30 p.m., City Council chamber. Items reviewed today will be presented to City Council for action at their January the 9th, 2018 or January the 23rd, 2018 public hearing, or as otherwise noted. Planning Commission rules limit a speaker up to 5 minutes to speak. We also ask that everyone please silence your cell phones at this time if you have not already done so. Our first public hearing item, UP-17-11 Brighton Prentice Park. Scott Tuning with Pinoni Associates Incorporated on behalf of Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority is requesting to amend a use permit approved in 2016 to redevelop the Lincoln Park community located at 1 Lexington Drive, where the original project approved in 2016 contained 178 apartment units on 15 plus or minus acres. They are now proposed to construct in phases 160 three-story multifamily townhomes along with associated parking lots, landscaping, and an activity center. The property is currently zoned urban residential high and is designated on the future land use map in the comprehensive plan as multifamily residential. The property is also identified as tax map 145, parcel 1. Our staff coordinator is Jonathan Hartley. I see that our applicants are already at the podium. If you would please state your name and your address for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Brian Donahue. I'm the Director of Development with the Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority. Our offices are located at 3116 South Street here in Portsmouth. To my left is Mr. Scott Tuning. He is our engineer with Pannoni and Associates out of Norfolk, I believe. As you are aware, the Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority has been working over the last several years to revitalize our Lincoln Park community. We were last before you in 2016 when you had provided approval of a use permit to revitalize the community and develop 178 multifamily housing units on site. Since that time, the Housing Authority has been working to revise our plan of development with an intent on reducing the density of the community and also switching from a three-story walk-up type of design to a townhome elevation and floor plan. We feel that this will provide for an improved quality of life for our residents, and also that the newly proposed plans will be for the betterment of the surrounding Prentice Park community. As we've previously done in our successful Westbury and Seaboard Square communities, we are going to be redeveloping the Lincoln Park community in phases, which will be dependent upon the obtaining of financing. We do have some slides for you. The location, again, at Columbus and Deep Creek Boulevard on the overhead here. The Lincoln Park community is highlighted in red. Again, it's an existing 178-unit community. We are looking to redevelop the property with a reduction in density of a maximum of 160 units as the maximum count there that will be redeveloped on site. This is Lincoln Park at Deep Creek and Columbus. It's Columbus Avenue there, I believe. And this is the proposed layout for the community. This is showing a maximum of 160 units in two-story townhome style buildings. We are proposing to phase the development anywhere from 2 to 3 phases. We have highlighted the first phase, which will consist of a 72-unit project, and that is the first phase that we're planning. And that's highlighted in orange. These are the proposed elevations for the project. The red is a brick exterior product, and I believe what appears to be white is a hardy plank cementitious siding product. So it's a 65-35% consistency on the exterior. I did want to point out a few items as it pertains to the project. Again, we're looking at a phased scenario here, 2 to 3 phases with a build-out up to 5 years, and really that's depending upon our HUD review process and the obtaining of financing. We're talking about a 10 to 20% reduction in the density here. We are currently at 62% occupancy at Lincoln Park as we've been holding our vacant units as they've been vacated, so we don't have a total 178 unit occupied development currently. It's a reduced number at present. We have met with the Lincoln Park residents numerous times since this project was originally envisioned, and we've had overwhelming support from the residents. They're very anxious to be in a new community, and I think they've witnessed the success that the Housing Authority has had previously at Westbury and Seaport Square and we intend to have the same success here at Lincoln Park. The community will be named Lexington Place upon its redevelopment. All residents who currently reside at Lincoln Park will have the opportunity to return to the project so long as they continue to meet the eligibility requirements. I do want to point that out. We will also be working to provide relocation benefits to the residents. This is a HUD requirement, which will be working very closely with the residents to ensure that they are relocated temporarily, permanently, and then also having the right to return based on their eligibility at completion as well. So we will we'll certainly be following up with them. That's going to be a long process, obviously, through completion, but we are engaged with our residents and are here to serve them in that regard. As I had said previously, Mr. Scott Tuning from Pannoni Engineering is here. He can answer any specific questions with regards to details on the project as well. And should you have any questions, I'm available for that.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question, but it's not to these gentlemen. To Mr. Hartley, I know you sent out a letter to neighboring residents. Did you get any feedback?
We have gotten no feedback on this particular item.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-17-11. I have no registered speakers on this application. If there's anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward at this time, state your name and your address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's Ursula Murphy. I'm with Lewis Esther Corporation, and our office is at 604 Court Street, Portsmouth, Virginia, and we own property along the Graham Street side of this development. I'd like to know why the change. The other proposal, and I was at one of the public hearings for the other proposal, was a much nicer design. It also took a lot of the parking issues away that we are experiencing with our properties. The other design did. This looked like it was going to keep the parking areas the same. So if somebody could speak on that, I would appreciate it. Because again, the parking issues that we have with the tenants, the residents at Lincoln Park on Graham Street, are problematic, and we have tried for years now to get a resolution, and we simply cannot get a resolution. And we were hoping that this new development would solve that problem by moving the parking, vertically through the properties. So if somebody could answer that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Hartley, would you like to answer that, or one of the applicants? Mr. Donahue, Mr. Tuning?
Scott Tuning with Pannoni. As far as the parking is concerned, just to go back to this slide, the parking scenario is we're actually keeping the same parking format as we had with the walk-ups, and it's actually a lesser amount with the townhome since we're actually going back with a lower number of units. So the parking was still, the strategy is still to put the parking, and I hope this works, if you can see, was to put it in the back of the units and bring all of the parking internal, except for along this back stretch, because there's not, we would be, the backs of the units would be against Dale Homes, but the idea was to bring all the parking interior. So that concept is still the same, is to get the parking off the street and into the parking lots.
In regards to I think the question or comment about building design, we felt this was a more appropriate type of design for our community. What this allows for is to provide every unit, every resident with their own private entrance. Previously, we were looking at 3-story walk-up buildings where the units are served individually through a breezeway. We thought that this would give a greater sense of place and home to our residents. So really, you're looking at attached single-family housing here as opposed to a multi-story building product. We felt that that would also blend in better with the surrounding community, which does consist primarily of single-family housing. So we thought this was a better product overall for the Housing Authority's residents and then for the overall at-large community.
I believe Commissioner G has a question.
More of a comment. I do recall when you guys came before us the last time. I remember one of the things that was raised in particular was security questions and concerns. I do think as a positive for this does address that. I know the breezeway question was something that was raised by a few people in the previous session. So I'm glad to see with the townhouse structure, instead of having those pass-throughs, you do have the individual opening. So that's just, I just wanted to comment on that plus with this.
Any further questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone else who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address UP-17-11, you may come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Madam Chairperson, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Commissioners, we are in need of a motion. We have a motion from Mr. Youngblood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we approve UP 17-11 as proposed with the conditions that were proffered by the staff.
Commissioner G.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioners. We have a motion and a second, and you will be voting electronically to approve UP-17-11. This item is approved by a vote of 5-0 with conditions and proffers by staff. Our second item, UP-17-12 Uptown. Brian K. Johnson requests a use permit for a child care center at 2115 High Street in the downtown D2 zoning district. The property is further described as Tax Map 171, Parcel 16. The comprehensive plan designates the property as part of a mixed-use corridor. Our staff coordinator is Stacy Porter. Madam Chairperson, members of the Planning Commission, I'd like to ask the applicant or representative to please come forward and present your application at this time.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian K. Johnson, co-owner of Bountiful Blessings Learning Center and Beyond. My wife is here with me. We both have a great desire to open up our daycare center at 2115 High Street to help be an added positive force in the community by way of teaching our young children, just sound morals and disciplines and things of that nature to help them go on to the public school system and become solid students. We're proud of our history already. We've been in the daycare business for 22 years. First 8 years in the home, last 14 years we've been in downtown Norfolk. We've always had very, very high rate of success with our children going on to become solid students in the public systems, school systems, and going on to graduate from high school, and many have gone on to graduate from college. We have many that have college degrees, and the teachers and things of that sort. Have one young man right now that's about to attend Duke University. They attended our daycare, which we're very proud of. We just have a desire to just be a positive influence and have a positive impact upon our young children and prepare them for an awesome, solid future. We do that by way of our curriculum, teaching them, loving, being there for them, whether they need additional, food to take home, or preparing, give them extra clothing, whatever we see the needs are, because we partially, for the most part at this point, have served the low-income community, and we've always tried to pride ourselves on positioning them to become solid, upstanding citizens.
I believe we have a question from Commissioner G. Excuse that. Mr. Youngblood does.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't know if you were in our work session, but I expressed a little bit of concern that someone might try to stop on High Street to drop off a child, since the front of your building is going to be on High Street. I know that you're going to do everything you can to discourage that, but I wanted to at least voice that one concern in my mind, that's somebody taking the path of least resistance might try and do that, even though it's an illegal maneuver.
Yes, sir.
So I urge you to, I'm really in favor of what you're talking about. I think it's wonderful to develop one of these vacant properties along High Street. Looks to me like a perfect location for you.
Yes, sir.
But I do want to at least mention this one concern.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, we certainly will handle that by our typical method of 3 strikes. If we've identified a parent that's doing that, not being obedient, because we will have posted in many obvious places within the daycare that all parking, pickup, and drop-off will be in the rear in the parking lot. And if anybody doesn't adhere to that, then we'll give them 3 strikes, and after that, we will have to kindly ask them to remove the child and find another daycare center. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-17-12. If there's anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward at this time, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed. I need a motion.
Commissioner G.
I move to accept UP 17-12 with conditions.
I second that motion.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second, and you will be voting electronically. This item is approved 5-0 with conditions. At this time, prior to consideration of items UP 17-13 and UP 17-14, I would like to ask Mr. Hartley to brief the Planning Commission and the public on the federal limitations on local considerations of telecommunication towers and facilities. Mr. Hartley?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The next 2 applications are both for telecommunication towers at 2 different locations. And I just wanted to kind of summarize the situation that the city faces in considering this application. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 sets out how the telecommunications companies can site facilities and what is required of them in terms of documenting and meeting all of the standards that the FCC has set up. In '96, one of the last changes that was made to the act, and it was actually offered by Congressman Goodlatte, who served the Roanoke area, was to preserve local zoning authority, which essentially allows local jurisdictions to make land use decisions about where towers are sited. However, there were concessions made to the telecommunications industry in exchange for maintaining that zoning and land use authority. And I'd like to just go through those so that there's a clear understanding on the part of the commission as well as the public of what our limitations are in considering a communications tower. First of all, if there is a decision to deny an application, it must be in writing. That doesn't really apply right now because the ultimate decision will be up to City Council, not the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is here to make a recommendation. Decisions denying telecommunications towers must be supported by substantial evidence. That is self-explanatory, I believe. Localities may not adopt regulations that prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting wireless services. So essentially, that not only would apply to regulations, but as well as discretionary actions such as a use permit, indicating that we can't prohibit wireless services throughout the city. The next item also prohibits us from discriminating between essentially the same services. So we can't pick a winner like Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T and say that's the only company we want. Part of the Telecommunications Act overall was to encourage competition. Competition in our society is generally considered good because it keeps prices lower. So it's good to have competition. The localities must act on applications for approval of telecommunications towers within a reasonable period of time. We can't just keep kicking a can down the road and delaying. We have to act in a timely manner. And probably the most important one, particularly given some of the comments that we've had on the next application, UP 1713, is that we are, as a local jurisdiction, preempted and prohibited from regulating on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions. So the whole issue of public health, of how radio waves, communication waves from cellular phones and cellular towers may affect people is not something we can consider as a, and I'll use the word substantial evidence or a legitimate rationale for denying a use permit application for a telecommunications site. So I just wanted to go over those basically 6 items. You do have in your packet a summary, I'll say an official summary from the FCC that explains in more detail what those limitations are. I would ask that both the public and the commission keep all of these in mind as you deliberate and make a decision on this application. Are there any questions about any of those from the commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Our next item, UP-17-13, Uptown Westbury. Drew Patterson with Network Building and Consulting, LLC, on behalf of T-Mobile, is requesting a use permit to construct and operate a 150-foot monopole telecommunications tower on a 1.58-acre parcel located at 800 Peninsula Avenue. The tower would be occupied by T-Mobile with space for at least 2 other users. The property is owned by Act and Associates, LLC, located at 507 Oaklet Drive in Chesapeake, Virginia, is Zone Industrial IN and is designated as Light Industrial on the Generalized Future Land Use Map in the city's comprehensive plan. The parcel is also referenced a map number 188, Parcel 1. Our staff coordinator is John Hartley. And you are,
Lisa Murphy,
Lisa
here on
Murphy.
behalf of the applicant.
okay, great. Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Again, for the record, my name is Lisa Murphy. I'm a local attorney with an office at 999 Waterside Drive in the city of Norfolk, and I'm here today on behalf of the applicant. The application that you have before you is the result of over a year's worth of work. I know there was a question in the informal session that came up, and we can talk about the other location that we had looked at initially. But as Mr. Hartley mentioned in the informal session, really, you know, the use of cell phones has now greatly increased, and the types of use have increased. So one of the things that did this was the recession. The recession accelerated this movement to wireless-only households. Folks looking at their budget said, you know what, I can afford a cell phone or I can afford my landline phone. Over 50% now have gotten rid of the landline phone, unless you're like me and you have a home security system in your house that's tied to your landline phone. You can live with a wireless phone, and that way people can reach you wherever you happen to be, whatever you happen to be doing. So that's really the trend. The other trend that we're working with is initially 20 years ago now, when wireless was being built out in this market and in other markets, the focus was on the interstate. The traveling public, everybody knows somebody that had one of those big bag phones. It was usually folks that had to travel a lot for work, salespeople, people that went from place to place. So initially, you'll look at the build out of most everybody's network. It's along the interstate, it's along the major roadways, and it was really a service that was used primarily by the traveling public. Now, as I said, more than 50% of people expect to be able to use their wireless phone in their home. So that's changed the dynamic where you had these towers and antenna structures maybe 5 miles away. Now we've gotten smaller and lower, and we have to be able to cover residential areas. And that's really the biggest challenge that we have, is how do we cover the residential areas in a way that meets the requirements of the federal government, the state government, your local zoning ordinance, the community, the RF engineers' technical requirements, as well as the carriers don't have powers of condemnation. Unlike the power company, we can't say, you know what, that land right there is perfect. We have to find a willing landlord. In this case, you know, we've been able to find an intersection of those things. As I mentioned, there's wireless penetration is over 100%. What does that mean? There's more than one wireless device for every man, woman, and child in America, and that number keeps growing. The bigger number, as John mentioned, is data. Data now is a huge driver. People, I saw an article on USA Today, Cyber Monday. Over 50% of people were accessing Cyber Monday deals through the internet on their phone as opposed to their laptop at work or their computer. So data usage is also driving this need for additional sites. And as I said, more sites lower, closer to residential community. Mobile traffic now is about 61% from videos. So the demand for wireless has grown tremendously. This shows you the, hopefully I can get to it. As the staff report and Mr. Hartley indicate, the property here is really flanked on all sides just about by CSX railroad property. There's a transfer station down here. There's a spur that runs through here. The property itself is zoned IN industrial, which, as your staff report indicates, is the heaviest industrial zoning designation in the city. It's at times been used for repair facility, junk storage, and what you can't really get from the staff report, and I think it would be helpful, Commissioner Youngblood mentioned going to the site. Here are some pictures that I took yesterday with the property owner that give you a sense of the buffering that's there, the natural buffering, but you'll also see on that site some of the materials that may need to be moved as the condition indicates. The site's already been cleaned up quite a bit by the property owner. This first picture shows the approximate tower location which you couldn't get to without going through the gate into the property, looking back towards the Westbury property. So you can see not only is there a good buffer of trees even in the wintertime with all the leaves off, but that structure you see there is about a one-story cinder block building. So that adds a buffer as well. And this shows you the site from the air. So you get a sense of the vegetative buffer from the air, but also these pictures, I think, help as well. As Mr. Hartley indicated, along the rear of the PRHA developed neighborhood, there is an 8-foot fence with slats in it, and I'm told from Mr. Donahue that the fence actually sits atop a berm. So there's pretty good buffering, landscaping, and a slatted fence now that divides this property or the neighborhood from the industrial property for obvious reasons. I mean, there are many light and heavy industrial uses that could be made of that property. So when the neighborhood was built, they went ahead and buffered, again, in addition to the trees that are there. So when a carrier has a need for a site to fill a gap in coverage, which is what we have here, and I'll show you, you've got in your staff report shows you the approximate location of the area that we're trying to cover. If you look at the propagation maps in your staff report, you'll see this light greenish area. You can tell that the majority of that is residential. So what we're trying to do is get the antennas as close to the users as possible, which is where we are now. All the easy sites are done. Now we've got to get to the homes. Many communities do this through antenna sites at schools, on flagpoles, on light pole replacements. But in this case, the carrier and PI Tower Development had to find a location to actually build a structure. I can tell you that's a last resort. It's expensive. They have to hire lawyers. They have to invest in capital. The cheaper, easier thing to do is hang antennas on any structure that's high enough to get you coverage. In fact, in talking to T-Mobile's RF engineer yesterday, they even looked at some of the billboards along 264 to see if those might be high enough, and they ruled those out as a possibility. So when a carrier determines there's a need for a structure to hang antennas, they're going to look for property that's buffered. It's got to be, from an RF standpoint, it has to be close to the area that you're trying to cover. And the prior location, the original site that the applicant found was over, it's 1,000 Elm Avenue. It's the triangle piece that John was describing. It's across from the splash park. And it was closer to this part of Westbury than the site that we're actually proposing now. The other thing you'll notice, and unfortunately it doesn't get picked up there wasn't a tree on that property. So it's a smaller triangular piece. There was no real way to buffer or conceal. And, we do like to try to find a bigger property that has some nice natural vegetation and buffering. As the staff report indicates, in addition, the actual access to the site is going to come off of Godwin to the south through the CSX Railroad property to the site. So you won't have construction trucks and construction equipment coming in off of county over here into the site, the way I drove into the site yesterday. Again, they'll be coming through the CSX property. And that was a long and difficult process that the applicant has been working through. So the original site didn't have any access issues. PRHA had extra land they were willing to allow us to use. As John mentioned, there were a couple reasons why that site had to be withdrawn. The way the land was acquired was one of them. It was also very visible. As I mentioned in the Wavy TV 10 interview, this original location, we met with Pamela Wilkins, the president of the Westbury Civic League, back in April. Then we met with the Civic League. We presented that. It really was too visible. So we had those issues in addition to the issue of how the property was acquired. The applicant continued to work with CSX to try to get this property to be able to use it, because from a planning standpoint, it really is ideal in that it provides the buffering that we need. And the distance, the prior site, the closest home, I think, was 150 feet. This gets us additional distance. The closest home is over 200 250 feet. I think it's 252. And again, we've got a separation of uses as far as the access coming in and out. As Mr. Youngblood indicated, Commissioner Youngblood, a wireless facility is a passive use. Once it's built, it's visited maybe once a quarter by a technician in a panel truck that's just checking to make sure the antennas are working right. Otherwise, there's no noise, there's not a lot of employees, you don't have parking, you don't have all the impacts that you would have from a very active, heavy industrial type use. So it is a relatively low level use from that standpoint. This shows you that some of the homes. The structure itself is a 150-foot monopole as proposed. That enables us to provide space for T-Mobile and 3 other users. So as John mentioned, the core focus of the Telecommunications Act is competition. The federal government didn't say, okay, we want Verizon to provide everybody service. The benefit of that, unlike your cable and some of our other other utilities, is that they can compete on price. So once there's a facility where one carrier can hang its antennas, the others will be there also to provide coverage, also to compete for the business. And ultimately, the consumer is the winner there. So this shows the site layout and the tower itself. As I mentioned, the tower is a monopole. It's galvanized steel, 3 foot in diameter at the base. It tapers to 1.5 foot in diameter at the top. So what you see at the top is smaller than the base of the structure. And again, you have the panel antennas. In your staff report, there are photographs of what the tower would look like. There is a scientific, technical way that that's done, and that is you float a balloon. That's a big red balloon, about 3 feet in diameter, up at 150 feet. The engineers take pictures from multiple vantage points, which is why you have all the pictures. And then they simulate what that monopole structure would look like. So it's a requirement of your zoning ordinance, and it's a way to show what the visible impact of the structure would be. As I mentioned, no lights at all on this tower. As John covered, the health effects is something we deal with in 2 ways. First of all, when I talk to the community, I try to explain the science behind it, the way it works, the fact that all of the equipment in this room is providing more RF energy than what you would find at the base of the tower. It really is very safe at the base, and it's very safe for the surrounding, but it is regulated by the FCC, and they make a determination of what the standard of safety is. And as a requirement of your ordinance, the carrier has to confirm that, yes, we have complied with the FCC requirements. And in this case, in your package, you'll find a NEAR report, which is required by your ordinance, and it confirms that the antennas that will be operating will be thousands of times below the federal limit that's set for safety. So I don't like to say, no, you can't consider it. What I like to say is it's safe, and we've complied with the federal requirements. And that way you know that you've got some comfort level there. There are a few things that we were asked to do. I'm going to pass these around. When we meet with people, they say, well, show me other residential areas where there are towers. So I've got some pictures for you here that are just that. Other residential areas in the city and otherwise that have towers. A couple other things. The other question that came up had to do with housing values, prices. As you can imagine, now that antennas are providing service in residential areas, you're seeing towers in one form or another go up. Those gives you some examples. There's also a report by the tax assessor in York County who was asked at a particular hearing, what do tax assessors think the impact is of towers on homes? And then there's an article that ran in the American Bar Association much more recently that looks at the impact of wireless structures on homes. I can tell you, I've been to many community meetings where people will say, I almost didn't move into this neighborhood because you had no wireless coverage, or I work from home, I've got to be able to get the internet on my phone or my wireless device. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I really do think we've found a location that really falls in that intersection of all the different varying needs and requirements that we have to meet, and we respectfully request that you approve this application.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Thank you. I do have two people that are listed as the applicant, Drew Patterson and Orlando Landron. Do you have anything you would like to add to what Ms. Murphy? Either of you?
I think Drew was going to speak at the end of
Okay. If he's the applicant, he actually needs to be up front at the beginning as opposed to the end. Okay.
Vice Chairman,
Thank you.
members of the Planning Commission, good afternoon. My name is Drew Patterson, and I am the applicant, and I'm the project manager for this particular project. I'd just like to point out T-Mobile has identified an area where coverage is lacking. I know there were some concerns at the community meeting that folks said, I have bars on my phone, why do we need this tower? The fact of the matter is T-Mobile has run their computer software, and they found through all of that that there is a gap in coverage at this particular location. My sense is that if T-Mobile has a gap in coverage there, that so does Verizon and AT&T and the other carriers, so we don't expect this to be a single carrier tower. I'd also like to just point out that we did look at two properties, as Ms. Murphy alluded to. The first property, we had a community meeting. The planning staff spoke and the community spoke, and we moved that location to this location. The property is zoned industrial. The land use plan designates it as heavy industrial. The zoning ordinance, I should point out, requires a 150-foot setback from residences. We are 250 foot from the closest residence. That being said, we meet or exceed all zoning ordinance requirements. The comprehensive plan and the planning staff has deemed this an appropriate location for this tower, and we respectfully request that the Planning Commission find the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Orlando Landron?
Good afternoon. My name is Orlando Landron. I'm the RF engineer for the Virginia market for T-Mobile. Appreciate you guys listening to us today. This area we have here, they refer to as a gap in coverage. Let me qualify what that means to us. The sites around that we have in this area are some of the most congested we have in our territory in Virginia. Our territory goes from Fredericksburg, south of D.C., all the way to North Carolina, Outer Banks, and all the way far west to Tennessee. So this is one of our most congested areas that we have in our network. And what that looks like to the users is they're trying to download their videos and this and that, and user texting and all their other services, and you're getting a little spinning wheel where nothing's really happening when you get to those busy periods of the usage in the network. So that's why we're really looking for this location. We've looked at other locations, but as the density of the city is such that all the users are there, we have to get more and more specific about where we actually place these facilities. You can't just move it a mile this way or a mile that way. It doesn't provide the desired offload effect for the capacity constraints that we're having. So we have looked at a couple locations. A couple of these were even billboards, but we eventually ruled them out as they're just not going to provide the capacity offload and basically provide the service that we're trying to support in the area. So with that said, this is a location that I guess we could find a willing landlord, and we meet all the requirements from our point of view. So we're requesting you support our application, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to provide a lot more detail if you need to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-17-13. I do have several speakers. As I call your name, would you come forward? You will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Our first speaker is Aisha Clemons.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aisha Clemons, 1501 Tally Circle, and thank you for allowing me to have an opportunity to speak and to voice my concerns. I am a first-time home buyer, and I love my home. I love Westbury, and I purposely purchased my home just for the simple view that I have where my house is situated. Also, I have a 6-year-old son, too. And so basically, my main concern is of course, the health reasons, because it seems that, they're considering more money over families, I mean, at least give us an opportunity to raise our kids without added health concerns and risk of cancer or any other concerns coming from this tower. Because honestly, you don't know the total effects of the emissions that are coming from, the radio frequency from this tower. And also, it's just an eyesore. It's simply an eyesore. Purchasing my home, like I said, I purchased it for the view, and now to have to look at a tower and also be concerned with, well, hopefully I'll be healthy in the next year, it's really frustrating. And I keep hearing, there's a fence there and there's trees and different things like that, but, the trees, they're not 150 feet, nor is the fence with slats. So we can still see it. It's just not, aesthetically pleasing. And I know PRHA and whoever, PRHA built, the neighborhood, but that wasn't their ideal plan, to have something that could, take away from the home values and just the aesthetics of the community. And so it will affect our property values and just the simple look of our neighborhood and just the peace of mind knowing that we purchased our homes one way and now there's an added distraction. And it's actually terrifying to know that they're proposing something so close to our homes. It's really, really scary, and I'm afraid. And I just hope that you all will consider the fact that there are hardworking families out there, a lot of kids, a lot of elderly people, that we really value our property, our health, and our livelihoods, and I just hope that you consider it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. One moment, please.
Commissioner Youngblood, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Ma'am, I understand your concerns, but you need to recognize the fact that the RF emissions issue is something that we cannot consider by federal law. So I read through a big packet of letters from other residents, and yours might be in here too. I didn't see it. And every one of them talks about the radio frequency and health degradation. But I have to tell you that as subsequent speakers come up here, we really can't consider that. That's just, it's out of our hands. Now, as far as the view and the property values, that property is zoned for the heaviest industrial use in the city of Portsmouth. You could have, I made a list of some things that could be there. You could have a trash transfer station there. You might have a cement plant put in that place. It could be a smelter. There could be a rendering plant there or a recycling plant. And I submit to you that any one of those would be enough to make your skin crawl. It would, if you want to find something that's going to tear up your property values, any one of those things would get your attention. I mean, I'm not trying to talk down to you. I'm just trying to say
no, not at all.
that of the possible uses of this property, a cell tower is, to my way of thinking, the most benign of the options, and the options aren't good. I know that the Goodwin family, who owns that hunk of property, would be happy to sell it to anybody who'll buy it at a decent price. And if one of these other much more objectionable uses were offered to them, then you'd be stuck with it. You would have no appeal. So yes, I understand your concern, but I want to point out that, one, the RF emissions are out of our control, and two, this is probably the least objectionable option you're going to get. So I really appreciate seeing the community turn out for something like this. It's highly unusual for us to get this many letters concerning any issue. In fact, it's highly unusual for us to get any citizens to show up for or against an issue that comes to us. So I applaud your community support. We welcome it, but you've seen the 2 points that I have to make here. So thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And I do understand that all the other options are horrific, but I kind of put the cell phone tower in the horrific category too, just from my standpoint and just from the invisible concerns that we can't see until, we go to the doctor. And I understand that everything is protected, by the law, but just simply just from aesthetics and just our property and, what we, actually wanted to see when we moved in the neighborhood, that wasn't there. And, we just wanted our voice to be heard. We really do not want it. Pretty please consider, everything that we have to say. And I thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Ms. Clemons.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker, Lawrence Owens.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Lawrence Owens. My home is located at 1452 Tally Circle. On behalf of myself and members of the Westbury community of homeowners, I am here to register the community's strong opposition to the cell tower application that has been submitted to the City of Portsmouth Planning Department. Since I only have 5 minutes for these remarks, I will give the conclusions up front. The Westbury community of homeowners is strongly opposed to this cell tower application, UP 17-13, and any other cell tower application that would be placed that eyesore in the vicinity of our homes. The application has numerous instances of inaccurate data. The application refers to a 150-foot pole, yet tucked in the application is a height of 154 feet. The sleight of hand photography is amazing. Photographs are included that were taken from distant locations. That is to make everyone think you will barely be able to see the monster tower. Photographs taken over and in front of a current eyesore on County Street are used to build the application. Look at the photographs that are supposed to convince the staff that the trees and fence will hide the tower. If you stand close enough to the fence and trees, you can hide the tower. If you move back into my yard, it is clearly a monster in the community backyard. And on top of that, the trees don't have leaves all the year long. This tower will have a significant long-term impact on home values and property values of the area. The decreased home value will result in decreased tax base for the city of Portsmouth. This tower, if approved by you, will bring harmful electromagnetic emissions, pollution, noise, construction traffic, and chaos to our communities and city. The applicants would have you think that they are bringing services to the community. That is the equivalent to saying, here, drink this poison, it's good for you. This is the second application of this type in our community by the same group. Why? Did this group think they could put this monster in a predominantly black neighborhood without a fight? Let us be clear. We will fight this group and this application as long as necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Our next speaker, Pamela Wilkins.
Yes, my name is Pamela Wilkins. I live 805 Elm Avenue. I'm the president of the Westbury Civic League, and I'm coming to you on our behalf as homeowners and taxpayers in the city of Portsmouth. I understand they brought out the fact that Communication Act in 1996, number 6, where it says that you guys can't decide whether a cell phone tower can be placed or not, but it does not address any other issues as far as our concerns as far as health, property value, or the fact that we are taxpayers in this city and we do have a voice. And I have several concerns that I want to address. First of all, my question is, I have a question. When Westbury was built, why wasn't that area rezoned for residential rather than keep that little portion as industrial? That's the first problem. So therefore, with that being said, anybody else that want to come and put something industrial on that land, they can do it without taking into consideration the homeowners and what impact they're going to have on us or anything. Again, we are taxpayers in the city of Portsmouth. Next, whenever somebody asks for a permit to build something in your city, all the homeowners should get a letter if it's going to impact them. Only I got a letter, basically maybe because I'm the president of the Civic League. No one else got a letter. So my question is, why was that? Next, I understand TMobile and the landowner's interest is all financial. But you got to take, money is not everything making money. You got to consider. And I ask you all, would you like a cell phone tower in your backyard? There have been several studies on health concerns, and none of them have been conclusive enough to say it has no impact. You don't know what the long-term effects going to be. Just like a microwave oven, they have a radiation too, and you put your food in there, warm it up, and then that's it. You're not being exposed to that radiation from that microwave all day long. But with a cell phone tower, you have constant exposure to it, and you don't know what long-term effects. Now, if we're just going to look at number 6 on that Communications Act and say, well, we can't do anything because we can't, make a decision based on A, B, and C. But as a citizen, as homeowners yourselves, consider whether you would want that in your backyard. I'm sure there are other areas in the city that this cell phone tower can go. And as far as covering up a gap in coverage, most of the homeowners out there don't even have T-Mobile. Of course, they say they're going to add Verizon or whoever else want to participate on and pay them or whatever. It's all financial. Everybody got cell phones, but you still don't have to expose people to it, not paying attention to what could, what effect that could have. So that's the main thing, the eyesore, the health issues, and you all said you can't look at it from that point of view, but I'm asking you to look at it from the human point of view. Would you like that in your backyard? So that's some of our issues, and a lot of times, just like that Communication Act, 1996, it didn't take any of that in consideration. It just gave you guidelines of what you can and can't do, but it didn't specify anything else. And again, I say it again, as homeowners and taxpayers, we have a say. So we're leaving it up to you all that were elected to take our concerns in consideration and, see how you all going to handle that. Thank you.
Ms. Wilkins? Ms. Wilkins?
Hold on,
Can you
please.
come back? Got a question.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just noticed that in our packet, it shows that the city sent out letters to 21 property owners to notify them about this. You asked who got notices. There's a list of 21 people here. I didn't check to see if your name was on it, but it probably was.
21 people?
Yes,
Of a
ma'am.
residents that have 275 homes?
I said 21, yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's not even a third of it.
Well, it went to folks within some radius of where this tower is located. I'm not sure what the criteria is, but I wanted to clarify the fact that the city did send out notices.
Actually, Mr. Hartley, would you like to clarify who receives letters?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. We're required by law to only send notices to the adjoining property owners or somebody who lives across the street or a public right-of-way from an application. So in this case, we sent letters to the property owners of all of the surrounding adjoining properties. We also put a sign, and I know it's not in the best place, but that's a hard site to get to from any angle. At the end of Peninsula, there is a sign that the city ordinance requires, that isn't required by state law. We're also required to publish a public notice in the newspaper essentially 2 weeks before today's public hearing. What I find interesting is that we've received a number of complaints about the letters, but it seems like everybody in the Westbury community knows about this application. And but again, to clarify, we send letters to adjoining properties, not everybody in the community. So.
Okay, I bear to differ with you, Mr. Hartley, because we have homeowners here that live directly where that cell phone tower is going to be, and they did not receive a letter. If you need confirmation, they can stand up and tell you that. And as far as the sign, I have not seen a sign out there. If it was a sign out there announcing what's going to be, it was so in the woods, in the bushes, that you couldn't see it.
The letters are sent based upon the most current records of the assessor's office. And we're required to use that information as our legal notice. If that information is inaccurate, or if people are renting rather than owning, they may not have received a letter.
There's no renters in that area, sir. They're all homeowners, and some of them are here. They can stand up and confirm that they did not get a letter. And they live their homes, their cell phone tower that they're proposing is right in their backyard. And they did not receive a letter. The only letter they got is the copies I made and gave to the homeowners. They weren't aware of it.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkins.
Okay.
Our next speaker, Tony Goodwin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Vice Chairman. My name is Tony Goodwin, and I reside in the Parkview section of the city. My profession is a commercial real estate agent, and I'm also one of the partners and owners of this property at 800 Peninsula Avenue. Just to give you a little backstory to the property, we purchased it in or around somewhere around 2004, inheriting the tenant that was on the property at the time, which was basically a car dealer, storage facility, and also in some classifications a junkyard. In that process, we continued to collect rent, but our intentions when purchasing one of the only privately held industrial properties north of 264 and east of the Norfolk-Portsmouth Beltline Railroad, subsequent to the fact that the CSX Railroad and some of the Port Authority properties are considered heavy industrial. Our intentions were to create a location to potentially relocate some of the industrial businesses along the corridors of the 800, 900, and 1,000 block of High Street to help facilitate new development in that corridor. That desire has never changed or wavered. We, of course, are losing businesses on High Street, and that is just because they're going out of business or moving outside of the city without the ability to move into a property that would be already zoned by right. The PI Tower, of course, contacted us on the property based on that zoning, and we did our due diligence in 2004 and bought that property specifically because of that zoning. And then on top of that, we were heavily involved and engaged in the discussion of the zoning rework in 2010, offering, after some discussion, that this was going to be at some point in time a high-speed rail station. In some of the conversation, that kind of fell to the wayside. But somewhere around 2012, prior to the plans that PRHA had to build on the property, which would have been the former Ida Barber neighborhood, we offered to PRHA to buy the property and create it as a buffer, and they did not accept. And it was a fair offer. It was basically exactly what we paid for it. But they did not accept that. And so we continued on with our process as landowners and taxpayers to go back to our drawing board and say, can we still facilitate good business and also be a good neighbor to the community? Mr. Youngblood, I appreciate you for pointing out the fact that, yes, we could put a smelter back there, a recycler, by right because of the property's zoning. But that's not our intention, nor do we want to be a bad neighbor to anyone. We feel like this is a very subtle approach to being able to adequately fulfill a need by our potential tenant here, and at the end of the day, be a quiet and contributing property owner in the city of Portsmouth, and of course, pay our taxes. So I appreciate you for the opportunity, for the time to speak, and I will invite anyone to have a conversation over coffee, any of the residents or anyone that we can talk about this. But at this point in time, I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Our next speaker, Dante Jiggets.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, and members of the committee. My name is Dante Jiggets. I live at 1506 Tally Circle, which is about 250 feet from the proposed cell tower. And Mr. Youngblood, I know you already mentioned we can't reference the radio frequencies and such as a reason for not allowing those towers. So I'll just say good old-fashioned, we don't want it there, okay? We don't want it there. Mr. Patterson even said that in addition to T-Mobile, that Verizon and these other companies have a coverage gap, but I have Verizon Wireless, and I don't have any issues at all with my cell phone service or internet service or anything at all. Not one drop call ever. So, you know, everybody's already mentioned the health concerns and everything, and, you know, we already know. I mean, we're all human. You already know the risks, but we can't, you know, use that per the, you know, the Telecommunications Act. I understand that. So I'm just respectfully asking that you vote no to the proposed telecommunications tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jiggets. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-17-13. If there is anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward at this time and state your name and your address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. Randy Williams. My address is 1514 Tally Circle, also in the row of houses that's closest to the proposed cell phone tower. I just had a few notes that I took that are in response, direct response to what the presentation that was first given. These are not emotional responses, although this is a very emotional issue, but I do want to make these points that I found to be a little bit off-putting. I hope that the council will consider this. The buffer that she mentioned in the first presentation is dramatically overstated. It's a few trees and a very thin fence. You can even see when people are walking in that area. So there's not a huge buffer. I would say that the entire area could be used as a buffer if something was on the other side of it. But the buffer issue is very, very overstated. It's a very small area. The community, before I get to that, the coverage. If you look at the coverage map of T-Mobile using our zip code, it shows you on the internet that they have a lot of coverage there already. So that should not be an issue. And as Mr. Jiggett stated, we have Verizon and other carriers, and we don't have any problems. I run a small business out of my home. We have terrific internet service and cell phone service. So I don't think that is a major issue where they definitely need a tower that's going to serve the community because, as she stated, people already have cell phones and they work. So there's really not a need to try to help the community by putting another tower there. Also, the industrial use. We can talk about what could be there, but we're not talking about what could be there. We're talking about what's proposed and on the table now. So right now, there's not a recycling center. There's not a garbage center. There's a cell phone tower proposal, and it's the only thing that's on the table. So we shouldn't even be talking about what could be there that could be worse, because that's another issue for another day. The business, this particular, and I understand that Mr. Goodwin is one of the top commercial brokers in the area. I feel that he's a good man and has done a lot of things in terms of commercial real estate in the area, and this is by no way a personal attack to him, but I just think that this particular use of the property is not best because it would not serve the community directly. It serves the interests of the private parties directly. It doesn't do anything for the community. So I appreciate him wanting to be a good neighbor, but this is not being a good neighbor. Also, consider this. As was stated with the previous motion that was on the table concerning the redevelopment housing authority, the Westbury area is a transitional neighborhood. It was created, to my understanding, to bring stability to Portsmouth. Now, there are a lot of houses that are for sale, so it's still in transition. This is a horrible time to consider something like this. This is a horrible time to consider a cell phone tower. So even though we might not be able to talk about the health issues, if you are a prospective homeowner and looking for a place in this area, would that or would that not deter you from purchasing? So at the very least, we should wait to consider that until there's some stability in terms of the home prices and also the transitional nature of the people moving in and out of the neighborhood. We want to preserve it. This is one of the things that's going to be a good economic hub because of how close it is to downtown Portsmouth. It's one of the few areas that we actually have homeowners. We have working people there that are bringing tax dollars to the community. And also, I just want to say that the stability of the area, I think, is the strongest point that we have. It was created, if you think about the purpose of the Westbury community, why it was put there in the first place, is to create affordable housing. And I don't think we should put these people at a disadvantage, especially when they're first-time home buyers. They shouldn't have to deal with something like this in terms of wondering what their property value is going to be, wondering...
Mr. Jenkins, you have 1 minute.
Wondering what's going to be happening in the neighborhood. This should be something that could be addressed later on for a different use. And I also would like to ask the city to consider buying that land from Mr. Goodwin so that we can create further stability in the neighborhood along with the other developments that are happening as well. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jiggets. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anyone else here who would like to address this application?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, honorable commissioners, and fellow interested parties. I'm Mark Gadulda-Gietrowski. I live in the Sterling Point neighborhood of Portsmouth. The previous speaker and those before him, but particularly the young man who preceded me to the microphone, really hit some important quality of life issues. And I want to support the arguments he made. I'd also like to add a couple of other concerns. I have long believed that we have a responsibility in issuing permits to create new development. In that process, we are responsible to respect existing uses. Now, this is one of those boundary issues which are really problematic in a city of our age. So on one side of the line, you have an industrial corridor, and on the other side, you have a residential corridor. Unfortunately, when Westbury was developed, that was pretty much the lay of the land. And people bought homes in Westbury not really cognizant of what lay on the other side of that barrier. So now, you as decision makers have to mitigate between conflicting sets of property rights and expectations based on the code. I believe that Mr. Goodwin's offer to PRHA was really quite the best solution to the problem, but that ship has sailed. I would have to say that by my value system, it is more important to protect the rights of the residential owners in this particular situation. They had expectations. They were becoming homeowners. It's something that the grant from the federal government, which made Westbury possible, was designed to encourage. It was to allow people who had been excluded from the American dream of homeownership to become part of that dream, to have their share of that dream. And if they are not happy with something that the effects that we're not allowed to talk about, but if they are not happy aesthetically with having that particular use in their backyard, I believe you have an obligation to honor their wishes. So I urge you to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yarchowski. Is there anyone else here who would like to address this application? Appearing to be none, Madam Chairperson, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed. We need a motion.
Commissioners, if there's no further discussion, we need a motion. Commissioner Youngblood?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we approve UP 17-13 with the conditions proposed by the staff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve UP-17-13. You may vote electronically. This item is approved by a vote of 3-2 with conditions. Our next item, UP-17-14, Victory Crossing Shopping Center. CE Forehand, on behalf of T-Mobile, is requesting a use permit to construct and operate a 165-foot monopole telecommunications tower on a 2.75 acre parcel located at 3910 Victory Boulevard between the Victory Crossing Shopping Center and Interstate 264. The tower would be occupied by T-Mobile with space for at least 2 other users. The property is owned by Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority and is zoned General Mixed Use, GMU. In the city's comprehensive plan, the property is designated as part of a mixed-use corridor on the generalized future land use map. The parcel is also referenced as tax map 526, parcel 2.9. Our staff coordinator is Jonathan Hartley.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. C.E. Forehand, 219 Sir Oliver Road, Norfolk. I'm here representing T-Mobile, and I don't need to reinvent the wheel with all the discussion of why we need another site in this location, but it is also a high-demand area. So T-Mobile and T-Mobile also owns Metro PCS. They have a lot of customers in this area that are complaining about service. You have the neighborhoods that need greater service because all the data that's being used on the cell phones today with families using their phones for all types of research and watching video and movies and this type of thing. But you have a shopping area close by, and you have a community college right across the street. And I'm sure that all those kids in community college are downloading the answers to their tests while they're in class, or they're watching a movie, one or the other. But again, there is a demand, an increased demand for capacity coverage because the system is taxed out, it's overloaded in this area. And it's another location that we've been working on for quite a while, over a year, and we've worked extensively with Mr. Hartley and other planning staff to find a suitable location that will fit the needs of carrier and the community, and have the least impact on the city. But it is something that is for the citizens of Portsmouth. They're demanding it, and we ask that you approve this location, and I'm here for any questions that the commission may have.
Commissioner G?
Welcome back, Mr. Forehand.
Yes, sir.
Glad to see this proposal come across, especially given the last time it was presented, especially given the earlier proposal we had today. And glad to see that you worked with the staff to move to one of the other locations. As someone who generally lives right in this area, I too am happy to see the increased cellular coverage there. So just want to say thank you for working hard with the team to get this, to address the concerns that were voiced by the local neighborhood.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sir, how close is the nearest residential property to where you propose to put this tower? Just a rough idea.
I haven't measured it, but it's quite a distance. It'd be most likely on the other side of Victory Boulevard from, this is right behind the mall, and
I'm aware of where it is. I just wondered if you had taken the time to map out that. In my own mind, I'd say maybe a quarter mile. But
yes, sir. Yeah,
you think that's
it's a ways away.
Okay, good. That's all I need to know.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I've just been curious, did you know about the other tower that was being proposed today, and how
Yes,
does that
ma'am.
relate to what y'all are doing?
Yes, ma'am. It's actually one that's on it's a different tower company that's building it, but I work with Orlando Landron also. It's actually a site that's under my management, so I'm doing the leasing part of it, but not, the other company is doing the zoning part of it.
So they complement each other?
Yes, ma'am. As far as T-Mobile is concerned, it's actually one of the sites I'm working on also.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forehand.
Yes, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-17-14. If there's anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Madam Chairperson, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed. Need a
Commissioners, we need a motion. Commissioner Thaxton.
Make a motion.
Thank you. We have a second.
You have to, no. You have to.
To accept the application. I think this is one.
To approve. You need to talk.
To approve the application as presented.
Okay. We need a second.
Commissioner G? Thank you.
I second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve UP-17-14. You may vote electronically.
Can I,
I believe he was going to add to approve with conditions.
is it understood that that is with the conditions recommended by staff?
Okay, will do.
Yes.
And everybody's clear about that?
Yes.
I'm just, for the record, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we continue with our vote now?
Yes. This item is approved 5-0 with conditions as listed in our staff report. Our final item for today. I'll just let everybody get out.
All there today.
I was going to take a minute break. Well, if
That's
you want to
okay.
for the last one.
It's all good.
If everyone is okay with it, I'd like to propose we take a 5-minute recess.
Please.
5 minutes, please.
They don't want it, that's what I'm saying, staff recommended it not. So I need to make, yeah, that's good, but, no, okay. No. Oh, one hit,
We're going to come back in session now.
yeah.
All right, we're going to continue with our final item on the agenda.
Who's missing? Share. Where's Sharon?
Sorry, we need one more.
We might could go ahead on, because we don't have to vote.
Okay, we're going to go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, our final application, UP-17-15, North Truxton. Mark Parker requests a use permit for townhomes at 3301 Armstead Drive. The property is located in the Urban Residential UR zoning district. The property is further described as Tax Map 204, Parcel 56. The comprehensive plan designates the property as high-density, single-family residential. Our staff coordinator, Stacy Porter. Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, I'd like to ask the applicant or a representative to please come forward and present your application at this time. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Hello, Madam, and all the gentlemen and ladies of the on the board. My name is Mark Parker. I'm a business owner located 4404 West Norfolk Road, the owner of Satisfied Home Builders, Temperature Satisfied Heating and Cooling. I propose today to discuss the construction of 14 townhomes, designated area located at 3301 Armstead. The staff has denied the proposal of the construct of 14 townhomes at 3301 Armstead based on two factors. The applicant's proposal is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan recommendation for high-density, single-family residential development. The townhomes proposed is incompatible with the land use pattern in the vicinity of the partial of which is characterized as single-family residential development. Currently, the comprehensive plan is developed in 2008, recommends for the proposed property high-density, single-family residential development with the creation of new Truxton-style house plans and creation of first-floor addition plans to help long-term age in place. Also, the plan identifies its long-term goal to focus on the construction of approximately 30 dwellings and to replace obsolete housing in the community. Additionally, the plan addresses utilizing the full resources of the city to increase diversity of the city's housing stock with affordable ownership housing. I, Mark Parker, Satisfied Home Builders, would like to counter the planning staff for the denial of constructing 14 townhomes at 3301 Armstead Drive. I, Mark Parker, the builder, would like to request for approval to construct 14 townhomes based on the following. The comprehensive plan designates North Truxton as transitional, an area showing evidence of decline or potential for decline where reinvestment is needed. Where the plan identifies creating first floor addition plans to help long-term age in place, this would be the responsibility of the homeowners. Based on a demographic study that was done for the city of Portsmouth back in 2014, based on a demographic study of Truxton, many of the residents are renters, over 50% are renters, and on aging community with limited or fixed incomes and potentially not in a position to fund housing addition. Heirs are not returning based on the amount of the square footage of these properties. There are currently right now 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, approximately 800 square feet. Third of all, the development of townhomes will help with meeting the city long-term goal of constructing 30 dwellings and to replace obsolete housing. According to the 2015 Portsmouth Demographic Study, which was under contract with the city, stated the following. Since 1990, the city of Portsmouth population has declined by over 7%, while Hampton Roads population grew by 18%. One of the challenges Portsmouth faces is in attracting and retaining residents is its aging housing stock. 60% of Portsmouth housing units are more than 45 years old, compared to only 35% of homes in the metro area. Portsmouth has a higher percentage of renters than the region, which is odd given that its median age is higher than the Hampton Roads. If Portsmouth wants to see more economic activity, infill development, and population growth, it will focus on the demographic groups. It is already attracting and offering new housing options that are undersupplied in the city. The city should be encouraging more multifamily development and denser single-family development around the city's historic core, as well as taking steps to appeal to young adults, which I refer to as millennials, and new retirees seeking an affordable urban lifestyle in a largely suburban metropolitan area. Truxton has since 1963, this particular structure, this partial since 1963 has been unique in structure. In the heart of the community, there's a nursing home as of right now that has been there since 1963, commercial property in the center of the neighborhood. This study was conducted after development of the comprehensive plan and should be considered when making decisions to approve improvements to the city plan. In regards to the land use pattern, the zoning ordinance allows for multifamily development in the urban residential UR district with a use permit. The property currently has a use permit for assisted living facility. This permit has been issued since 2014. The construction of townhomes will not create a conflict with existing uses in the area because it's already residential. Will not vastly increase traffic congestion or nearby streets beyond that of the same amount of single-family homes. Will not increase the demand for public service or physical or social infrastructure more than single-family homes would. Change is needed and change is a must in the North Truxton area. I would like to show the proposed townhomes. Okay. This is the structure that's proposed, that's been there since 1963. We're in the process of demoing the property, which has already started. This is the surrounding neighborhoods. Here's a layout of the proposed townhomes. As you can see, these townhomes will be 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 1,504 square feet in the square footage with a fireplace, a single car garage, and wash and dry area. Here's the floor plans of the proposed townhomes. As you can see, there's a large living area with a patio, eat-in kitchen, and dining area as well with a nice foyer. As you can see, a single car garage. There also will be room for off-street parking as well within the driveway. The second floor offers the living area where there's 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and a nice sized laundry area. That will be the conclusion.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Commissioners, does anyone have any questions or comments?
Okay, no. Okay, thank you, Mr. Parker. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-17-15. I have several speakers. As I call your name, would you come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Our first speaker is Constance Lovett.
Good afternoon, panel. My name is Constance Lovett. I reside with my mother at 2601 Dahlia Street. It's right at the end of the corner where this facility is located. When he was talking about the homes going there, there is no way he can fit that many in that area, for one thing. Plus that, it is a residential area. There are still people living there. Not all people are renting. And on that one street, there are there's most of the homeowners, I'm thinking there's only one renter on that street. Most of the people are homeowners in that area, in that vicinity. My mother being one, who's been there for 68 years in that area. And we added on to the home. For one thing, I understand he was saying you could get the cars off the street with a garage. There is still not enough room to build that many houses in that, or townhomes in that area. And when they have company, where's the company going to park? On the street. There is not enough room for parking and for that many facilities. So we're saying, please deny this, because we do live in that area. There's still the homes there, even though they're older homes. The younger people are taking over their family homes, the mother and father who have passed away or in nursing facilities are taking over their parents' homes. And they do live in that area and would like it to remain as residential area and not adding in townhomes in that facility. Thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Lovett. Our next speaker, Ursula Murphy.
Good evening again. My name is Ursula Murphy. I'm with Lewis Esther Corporation, 604 Court Street, and I do live here in the city of Portsmouth in the Manorview neighborhood. I am here in support of the Wilson Ward Civic League and the homeowners that would be affected by this project. There is absolutely no way you can put 14 condominiums or however many side by side in that space. It's just not enough. I believe code states that in order for a room to be considered a bedroom, it has to be at least 7 by 10 with a closet. That's 70 square feet, and an 8 by 8 is not 70 square feet. So please, please consider the community's desires and deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Our next speaker, Joan Pritchett.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and Commissioners. I'm actually the resident that lives directly to the right at 3309 Armistead Drive to what is the proposed site at 3301. One of my biggest concerns is the amount of, I'm not saying that the future residents would be trashy individuals. I'm saying you're looking at trying to put 14 townhouses. That's 14 more trash cans, 14 more recycle bins. You can guarantee nowadays every resident that's married has a husband and wife. They each have a car. That right there takes up all their parking. If they have anybody that comes over, there's going to be the elevation in noise. Again, I'm not saying they're going to be noisy, loud partying. I'm just saying the amount of 20, possibly 28 minimum new people in that neighborhood is just going to create so much extra noise, extra traffic, extra trash, extra pollution in a variety of different ways. I understand putting in, obviously tearing down a building that hasn't been used in I don't know how long, because I just moved in 2014. The previous owner was the original builder of the house that I am in. And I can see how he could try and put 14 townhouses there because they're going to be very narrow and very and deep, take up this, the lot. But we've talked with him at our own personal civic league meeting, and We even tried to compromise and say, hey, how about some houses? You know, I honestly don't want to look out my kitchen and see a townhouse right there, you know, literally just feet from my property, because it's going to take the entire width of that particular 3301 to build 14 townhouses. A reduced number of townhouses or just single family, you know, even two-story houses would be a lot better for our environment in that neighborhood. Because he said at the meeting, they're going to be approximately, I think, 120 feet across. That is a very narrow house. And when you come to resale, a lot of people aren't going to want to build or buy a house that's literally 120 feet across. And we don't even know whether or not these townhouses have even been projected as being sold. So they could sit vacant if there's nobody to buy them, because it is difficult when you look at 700 square feet on one floor and 700 square feet on the top floor. And I have a friend that's got a 800 square foot house, and it's tiny, and they're not going to want to pay homeowner prices of, I think he was quoting at least $140,000 for a new husband and wife or a retiree pair. The new homeowners that are young newlyweds would possibly want to expand their family and move out. Then new renters or potential buyers would be needed. And as he stated, as according to his standards, Mr. Parker said 50% of our neighborhood rents. Well, if a new couple moves in and then they have a child or two and they want to move out because they need more space, they're going to be hard pressed to find a seller or a buyer who isn't in their exact position. And it's just going to be difficult for us to have that much of a unknown, I guess, is the biggest problem, because we don't know if they're already sold. We haven't been told whether or not he's got any potential buyers. And I just don't want 14 families living in a space that could conceivably only really house four houses comfortably. And you want to put 14 families in a space big enough comfortably for 4? It just doesn't make sense. And I respectfully request you deny the application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pritchett. Our next speaker, Sharon Russell.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Sharon Russell, and I live on the corner of Portsmouth Boulevard and Arcadia Avenue, which happens to have been family property. My parents built that home, and I'm one of the ones that migrated back. And I'd like to say that even though it's an older house, it was probably built when I was about 6 or 7 years old, that it has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a den, a fireplace, hardwood floors. It's a nice house, an attached garage. It's not a little teeny tiny house like Mr. Parker described. It's 1,400 to 1,500 square feet, and it's all on one level. It's not a 2-story house. It's a single-story house. That said, I'd like to address something else he said, because I'm vice president of our Civic League, and I know for a fact that at least 87 to 90% of the homes in Truxton, which is adjacent to historical Truxton, is home-owned. It's not rented, and the facts are down at City Hall. The other thing, if we were just a few feet over to the right and back, it would be in historical Truxton. And this wouldn't even be an issue, because you can't make those kind of changes in decisions. As people have stated, we don't want it there. We don't mind him building homes there. We just don't want that structure there. It doesn't go with the continuity of the community. Another issue that I have, and I'd like to address, is the burden to our existing utilities infrastructure. A few years ago, we had to upgrade in that area, and they tore down all the crepe myrtle trees on Portsmouth Boulevard, remember? To put in those new water and sewage lines. Well, the residents had to incur the offset of that, and that's a city record. It's just not stuff I'm making up. So when you do this structure, you're gonna have to compensate for all of those units with the water and sewage. You're also gonna have to have a sprinkler system tank put in just for that because they're close together for fires. Who's gonna incur the cost is what I wanna know. When we decide that that upgrade is necessary, because it's gonna have to happen. And I wanna know who will pay for the upgrade, who will pay to support that. Will we incur the cost as the residents of that area? And we would ask that you would deny this proposal because we just don't want it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Our next speaker, thank you. Our next speaker, Ray Smith, Sr.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, fellow
afternoon.
commissioners. Good to see you again. I'm here for similar reason that I was here before, is to the preservation of single-family communities. As the president of Cavalier Manor Civic League, I have been authorized at our last regular meeting to be here to support Wilson Ward Civic League and the residents of historic Truxton to maintain their single-family neighborhood. It is very important that we continue to, and I've already heard comments from the developer about the neighborhoods going down. I can suggest to him if he would come out to Cavalier Manor and see how many of those smaller homes are being purchased and rehabbed and resold by the dozens. That's the answer, single-family homes, not townhouses and condominiums. One of our fears in Cavalier Manor, which would be the same here in Truxton, would be that small location in the middle of so many single homes, historic homes. Also, the management and the upkeep of the property and what's going to happen to it long term if they're not successful. And if he's going to sell them, how is he going to sell townhouses in the middle of that area that he describes as kind of going down and very small homes in the neighborhood? So the bottom line here, and I won't belabor it, but we stand as Civic League in support of Wilson Ward Civic League, who wants to, and the residents who wants to maintain their single-family community, because that's the backbone of our city, and that's what's gonna improve and bring up the neighborhood is single-family homes, not apartments and townhouses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Our next speaker, Michael McClure.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mike McClure. I'm the property owner at 3220 Armstead Drive, across the street from the present building here. I am a born and raised resident of North Truxton, which I will remind you that is a historic neighborhood. My concern is that the configurations that are proposed by Mr. Parker don't fit into this neighborhood. We have single-family homes, and nowhere else in this neighborhood is any townhomes or apartments. So the proposed structures don't really fit into this neighborhood. And my question is, there's recent construction of new homes going on throughout the neighborhood of North Truxton. My question to Mr. Parker is, why townhomes and why now? I can understand if he wanted to come in and construct single-family homes on this site. But to have townhomes constructed, they just don't fit in, and we just don't want them. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Maurice Taylor.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is Maurice Connor Taylor, and I live at 3308 Armistead Drive, which is directly across the street from the structure. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak concerning the property at 3301. I recently moved back into North Truxton from Virginia Beach, back to my home place, just because of the tranquility there and the neighborhood. I invested quite a lot of money to remodel and upgrade the property because of the space. Along with members of the Wilson Ward Civic League, I'm seriously opposed to the construction of 14 townhouses on that property. Our neighborhood is made up of single-family homes, and we want it to remain that way. Single-family homes are now being built on every street in Truxton and North Truxton because builders and buyers are seeing the potential of that neighborhood. Townhouses would destroy that image and slow the renewal already in progress. I feel that townhouses will destroy the culture and the ambiance of the neighborhood. 14 units is too many houses in that space. At 3 people per unit, that's 42 people, where 5 single homes of 4 people will be half as many. I'm concerned that in 2 years, the owners of these townhouses will move out and these will become rental units. In 4 years, they'll become Section 8. There are no alleyways designed behind these 14 connected units. Therefore, on trash day, they will be collected on Armstead Drive, and those trash cans will be kept in the front of the house. It's unreasonable to assume that owners will store 2 garbage cans in a single one-car garage, or that they would pull those cans all the way around 14 units. It just won't happen. Our yards are well manicured, and we work hard to keep our neighborhood up, and 28 cans every day is an eyesore. With multifamily units, there'll be no control over maintaining the consistency of the development. We have a civic league, not a homeowners association. Therefore, no one will have any oversight over the appearance of these apartments or townhouses. Owners would have the right to paint the exteriors as they see fit, creating the possibility of 14 connected units, each painted a different color. Parking is going to be a problem if these units are constructed. Proposed driveways will take up 1 space. To count the garage as an additional parking space is absurd and unrealistic. Green space is limited. Little squares of grass in front of each unit will not be maintained. What homeowner will purchase a lawnmower to cut a square of grass no bigger than a card table? It's just unrealistic. What Mr. Parker sees is an asset to an established community. I see as the beginning of the demise of a community that has thrived for many years. Townhouses are fine, just not in North Truxton. Therefore, I beg you to deny Mr. Parker's application to build these townhouses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Our next speaker, Elvira Johnson-Williams.
Good afternoon, Madam Commissioner and body. My name is Elvira Johnson-Williams. I keep forgetting that. I live at 3313 Armstead Drive. I live the second house from this building that was there. It is no longer there. It has been torn down. Unfortunately, it was torn down. I mean, fortunately, it was torn down when it was. It was just inconsiderate the way that it was done. I did tell everything everybody else has already said. I'm not going to repeat what they said. But in this neighborhood, I'm also the president of the Wilson Ward Civic League. I'm going to first ask those that are here in opposition of this to please stand so that we can let you all see how much we are opposing. For those that are not here, I have their names on these petitions to demand that this proposal be denied. North Truxton is close to historic Truxton. Historic Truxton is on the National Registry. I've had people come to me and say, well, you got duplexes in historic Truxton. I say, that's right. And that's on the National Registry. But in North Truxton, you don't have duplexes. You have single-family homes that we all love. We have quite a few new homes that are being built every other week in the area, single-family homes. We're not knocking him for wanting to do what he wants to do, but we are opposing him for how he wants to do it and bring it to our community. I have asked, why not next door to him? If it's such a thing that he wants to improve our community, then build the single-family homes that he's been building, not bring these apartments into here. The last thing I remember him saying to me was, well, not directly to me, but he said, I want it sort of like the quarters. That's on the corner of Elm Avenue and London Boulevard. That has nothing to do with the townhouses he showed you here. It looks just like an apartment building. It looks like a big eyesore sitting in the middle of our neighborhood, and we don't want it. We don't want it there for so many reasons, that's already been stated. As Ms. Taylor stated, we don't have a homeowners association. We have a civic league, and we work hard. We get out here and we work to clean up our community, the city that we live in, the people around us, and we get so much help and feedback from people praising us for what we do to keep this community going the way we do. It is our hope and prayer that you will deny this petition for him to build townhomes in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-17-15. I have no other registered speakers. If there is anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward, state your name and address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Nishita Barnhill. Again, good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
I'm new to the area. Me and my husband, we are one of the ones who purchased. My address is 3222 Armstead Drive. We just purchased a brand new home directly across the street from that facility before they tore it down. We were told when we were looking, because he was speaking of the peninsula, we moved from Hampton. We were told that it would be single-family homes across the street. Being a single family, but right now my two kids are grown. I have grandkids that come from out of town, and my kids come from out of town because they're from Raleigh. We look to be safe, and I moved from an area where there were townhouses. And I'm just saying to you all, I was in the middle of a shootout, and thank God I wasn't hit. So we moved, we looked for safety, found this area not knowing much, but we found this area, and me and my husband being alone, he work over in Hampton, I work over in Hampton, and we commute every day, but we find safety in that community. It's quiet on that block. I don't know how it would be with townhouses, but I'm just not safe. And being a person that we purchased a new home looking for safety and quietness, I am begging you all to say no to the townhouses there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Commissioner Youngblood?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ma'am, I want to thank you for moving from Hampton to Portsmouth. Let's face it, it's the center of the known universe right here, and we happen to like it here a lot. On a more serious note, I want to applaud the folks from Wilson Ward who came out to talk to us. Ray Smith, good to see you again. We appreciate, I'm speaking for everybody because I think I can on that matter. We appreciate the community involvement. Whether you're for something or against something, really doesn't matter. The issue here is community involvement, and that's the basis of civic leagues. I think it's one of the strongest things that our community has to offer, because we've got a number of very active civic leagues, and their importance in our city can never be overstated. So thank you all very much for coming out and being involved in this process. As I mentioned earlier tonight or today, it's unusual to have this many citizens show up for anything. So it's good to have you here. Come back whenever you want. If you just want to sit in and watch us debate, that's great. If you've want to comment, that's good too. But once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address UP-17-15? This is your opportunity.
Hello, Commissioner. I don't know how to address you appropriately because it's my first time ever coming here. My name is Katrina Russell Nash. I stay at 3312 Armistead Drive. I'm a homeowner there. I'm not a renter. I've been there for 7 years, and I'm also a millennial, and I'm also a war veteran, and I suffer from PTSD, which is why I don't go out to groups like this too often, because it's very difficult for me to be around large groups of people. With that being said, when I purchased my home, I went there at like 2 o'clock in the morning just because I wanted to see how it was going to be. I went there at different times. 3 o'clock in the morning, I went there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and everything was always quiet. It was never cars, blasting music down the roads or anything like that, so I bought it. And it's still like that. We are a very tight community. I know all my neighbors here, and they are very supportive and they're very helpful, and I love each and every one of them. We maintain our homes. We all cut the grass at the same time of the week, and we look out for each other. But I feel as though that property is really only fit for 5 single-family homes. When you look at it on the map, it's really only allotted for 5 single-family homes. 14 homes, there's really no way that the parking situation would be disastrous. And I don't want someone's car or their company's car parking, blocking my driveway, things like that. I know he said there's going to be off-street parking, but there really is no space without blocking someone else's driveway, especially when you have 14 18-foot homes, because that's as wide as they're going to be. It's 18 feet wide, 19 feet wide. So I just don't feel like it's enough space. It's not enough space for that. I'm all for, he said that change need to be made, and he's absolutely correct. But you want to change for the better. You don't want to change for the worse. You don't want to throw a ton of people on a community. And with this being such a heavy military area, you're going to have people like me who have PTSD who will not be able to deal with a situation like that. You have every branch here who have gone through so many different things. So I just would like you to keep that in mind when you make your decision. Thank you very much for letting me speak. Did I need a statue? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner G.
Ms. Nash.
You don't have to come back up or anything. I just wanted to say, as a veteran and on behalf of the other veteran, thank you for your service. And I definitely respect that situational awareness that you had checking it out at 2 o'clock in the morning. It sounds like something my wife would fuss at me for doing. And definitely want to echo what he was saying. I do thank all of you and hope to see you guys here next month and then the month after and the month after as we have additional planning commission meetings.
I would like to just make one final comment. As the Planning Commission, we only make a recommendation to City Council. based on the public hearing and on recommendations from staff. And there is an entire review process which would deal with the site planning and what will fit and what's appropriate for the use, setbacks, stormwater, and things like that. So this is just the first step of a very long process if we were to approve it or recommend its approval. So just know that there's a long road ahead for any development there. Those are my comments. Anyone else? Okay. With that said, we need a motion. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Is there anyone else here who would like to address this application? Come forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Simons. I reside at 3404 Down Street, which is right around the corner from that building that used to be there. And I don't want to be long, and I don't want to echo what everyone else has said, but we as young people, we are coming into Truxton because I purchased my grandmother's house. So that's the home that my mother grew up in. We are coming because the houses are affordable. They are nice-sized houses. All of them are not small. And I have a very nice home, and I take care of my home. And for townhomes to come in, young people, we aren't buying townhomes for the most part. We're buying single-family homes because we want to grow our own families, not in a townhouse, in homes. So I would love to see that lot develop with houses, single-family houses, not townhomes. So I would appreciate if you guys just oppose this application. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Simons. Is there anyone else here who would like to address this application? Appearing to be none. Madam Chairperson, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Commissioner G.
I move for denial of UP 17-15.
Commissioner Hoffler?
I second that.
Commissioners, just for a point of reference, to deny this application, a yes vote would mean that you agree with it. To a no vote means you disagree. So the motion is to deny. We need a vote. Okay, we got the vote. You may. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
This application is denied by a vote of 5-0.
Before we conclude, Mr. Hartley, do you have any additional comments?
Three things. I'd like to just remind you about the joint work session on December 11th at 6 p.m. And as Mr. Youngblood inquired about earlier, there will be food provided. Second of all, the next Planning Commission meeting will be on January 16th, not on the first Tuesday, but the third Tuesday, because January 2nd is a holiday. And finally, I would just say the staff hopes that all of you have a happy and safe holiday season, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley, and we wish you and the staff a very happy holiday season as well. We do have one more item on the agenda.
Oh.
We need our election of officers for the 2018 very quickly.
Mr. Youngblood?
I nominate Albert Wilson Williams as the chairman, and Amy, I nominate you to be the vice chairman for 2018.
Okay.
Commissioner G.
Second that nomination, those nominations.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second for Albert Williams as our chairman for 2018 and our vice chairman, Amy Thompson. You may vote electronically.
Do I vote?
Vote. Vote. You didn't vote? The slate for our 2018 officers is by vote of 5-0. And our next one is the approval of our 2018 calendar. Need a motion, then a second, and we're going to approve. G.
Commissioner G.
I move for acceptance of the 2018 calendar.
Commissioner Hoffler? Thank you very much.
I move to second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the calendar for the 2018. You may vote electronically. You hit Hoffman, you got your blue light on. This item is approved 5-0.
Now, I believe we are finished.
Yes, we are.
Anybody else? This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Man, I can see the powers going to her head.